She arrived at the edge of the frontier with nothing but a stitched-up bag and a past she refused to speak about.
The wind cut across Redwater like it was hunting for souls, sharp enough to slice through Mara Lee's thin coat as she stepped down from the freight wagon. Her boots hit frozen mud and sank instantly, the cold biting straight into her bones. The driver didn't wait for thanks, didn't even look at her. "If you're needing work, try Holt's Saloon. Straight ahead," he muttered, already steering the horses away. Mara clutched her stitched canvas satchel, one spare dress, a comb, a few coins, and the last pieces of her old life. Nothing worth remembering, but everything she had left. Redwater stretched before her under a dying strip of sunset, wooden buildings leaning like they were tired of standing. Chimneys coughed thin smoke into the wind. Somewhere down the street, a telegraph tapped like a nervous heartbeat. Mara made her way along the boardwalk, steps slow, careful. The glow from the saloon windows painted the snow in amber light, warm, tempting, but dangerous. She hadn't eaten since dawn, but hunger wasn't what tightened her chest. It was the thought of walking into a room filled with strangers who saw women alone as prey, not people. She pushed the saloon door open. It groaned like it hadn't been opened since summer. Heat rushed over her, whiskey-thick air, sweat, smoke, and the heavy silence of men turning to stare. No ring on her finger, no escort, just a woman alone. "Well now," said the bartender, eyes narrowing. "What's your business?" "I'm looking for work," Mara said, voice steady despite the tremble in her hands. "Heard you need a cook." Laughter sparked across the room. "Bet she can do more than cook," a drunk man said. Before she could respond, another voice, quiet, calm, dangerous, cut through the room. "She asked for honest work, Donnelly. Respect it." Mara lifted her gaze. In the far corner, a man sat alone, hat low, coffee cooling. He didn't raise his voice, but the room shifted around it. Donnelly muttered and turned away. The bartender sighed, then nodded. "Kitchen opens before dawn, closes after midnight. $1 a day. Room upstairs, lockworks." Not kindness, just fairness. And fairness was more than she'd been given in a long time. She accepted, then paused at the corner table. The man who'd spoken still watched her, eyes dark and unreadable. "Thank you," she whispered. He didn't smile, just lifted his gaze enough for her to see the storm behind it. "Don't thank me. This town eats the unprepared." Redwater had seen strangers before, but none who looked like they were running from ghosts that wouldn't stay buried. The night hours passed beneath Mara's hands in a blur of clattering plates, boiling pots, and bread dough rising beneath damp cloth. The kitchen was small and smoke-stained, but it felt familiar in a way nothing had for months. She worked with the focus of someone who'd survived by keeping busy, hands moving faster than thoughts could catch up. Outside the swinging door, the saloon filled and emptied twice over. Ranch hands, gamblers, drifters, men hardened by dust and miles. She heard their voices but never looked up. The fewer eyes she met, the safer she stayed. Near closing, the man from the corner appeared in the doorway, silent as he had been all night. He placed an empty plate on the counter. "Food was good," he said. His voice held no warmth but no mockery either. Mara wiped her hands on her apron. "Thank you." He reached into his coat, pulled out a silver dollar and set it beside the plate. "You already paid at the bar," she said. "That was for the meal. This is for the one who cooked it." She hesitated, fingers hovering over the coin. Kindness that asked for nothing felt unfamiliar, dangerous even. His dark gaze softened just enough to show he wasn't blind to her hesitation. "Name's Calder Holt," he said. "This town's quieter when folks learn to mind their business. You should too." Before she could ask what he meant, he stepped back into the saloon's fading crowd and was gone. Later, exhausted, Mara climbed to her small room upstairs. The boards creaked beneath her boots, walls thin enough to hear every laugh and argument downstairs. She set the silver dollar apart from the rest of her coins, unsure why it felt different. Maybe because it felt earned, maybe because of the man who gave it. She lay down, ready for sleep to swallow her, when a knock rattled the door. Her breath froze. "Miss Lee," came the bartender's voice. "Jake. Got a proposition." She opened the door only a hand's width. "What kind?" "A ranch south of town, Harlan Ridge. Needs a cook while theirs is away. $2 a day, room and board. Twice what she earned here. Enough to start over, enough to breathe." But Jake's expression didn't match the offer. His eyes held warning. "If you go, Read every word they put in front of you. That ranch don't run like the rest." "Why tell me?" he shrugged. "Because you work hard, and because I've seen folks go out there and come back different." She swallowed, steadying herself. She had survived worse places than a ranch with hard rules. "When does he need me?" "Wagon comes at first light." As Mara closed the door, she whispered to no one, "I can handle it." But long after the lamp dimmed, she couldn't shake the memory of Calder's voice, quiet, sharp, warning. Opportunities in the West never came free. Some just waited to see what you'd pay later. Subscribe for more frontier stories, new tales every week. Mara rose before dawn, packed her satchel, and stepped into a sky still painted in deep violet. The wagon arrived just as Jake said it would, driven by a man who gave no name and even less kindness. He didn't speak during the ride, only whipped the reins and stared ahead as the land turned from frost-bitten prairie to a vast stretch of snow-covered fields. Mara clutched her coat tighter, telling herself she needed the money, that work was work, and she'd handled worse places than Harlan Ridge. But something about the silence pressed against her ribs like a warning. When the ranch finally appeared, it rose from the white horizon in sharp lines, fences straight as soldiers, windows spotless, not a single board out of place. It didn't feel lived in, it felt controlled. A thin woman met her at the porch, posture stiff, eyes cold behind wire-rimmed spectacles. "You're the new cook," she said. "Mrs. Garrett, follow me." Inside, the air smelled of soap and stale bread. The kitchen gleamed, every pot arranged like inventory. "Meals at 6, noon and 6, no exceptions, no extra portions. Mr. Harlan dislikes waste." Mara nodded, though her stomach twisted. She'd seen hungry workers before. Denying food never ended well. As she worked through the morning, chopping, boiling, kneading, she could feel eyes watching her, not with curiosity but with measurement. The foreman, a tall blond man with a smile that never reached his pale eyes, approached near noon. "Riggs," he said, like the name should mean something. "You take orders from me. Any trouble, any needs, you come to me first." He stepped closer than necessary, voice dropping. "We look after our own here, long as they behave." Mara forced her hands to stay steady. "I'll do my job." His grin sharpened. "See that you do." When he left, the room felt colder, though the stove still burned hot. Harlan Ridge offered good wages, but Mara was already learning some places don't pay in dollars alone. Mara settled into the rhythm of the ranch faster than she expected, though each hour felt like walking on cracked ice. The workers arrived for their meal at noon, 20 men, shoulders stiff from labor, faces hollow from exhaustion. She served them beans, salt pork, and cornbread, portions measured to the ounce just like Mrs. Garrett demanded. Their eyes said what their mouths didn't. It wasn't enough. When she reached a young ranch hand barely old enough to shave, she tipped an extra spoonful onto his plate. Mrs. Garrett's stare cut her from across the room. Mara pretended not to see. Later in the pantry, she noticed something stranger. The ledgers listed more supplies than what actually reached the kitchen. Barrels marked full were half empty. Crates accounted for on paper never arrived. Someone was bleeding the ranch dry, just not the workers. She folded that thought away, like a secret note, and kept moving. On the third day, she hauled water from the well when hoofbeats echoed through the yard. She turned and saw him, Calder Holt, snow dusting his coat, reins loose in one hand. He looked at her with a quiet intensity, as though confirming she hadn't vanished. "Didn't expect to see you here," he said. "They buy horses from Redwater. I deliver them." Mara opened her mouth to answer, but Riggs stepped from the barn with a smirk sharp enough to cut. "Look what we've got," he drawled. "Redwater's quiet hero." Calder didn't rise to it. He simply stared, eyes cold and unreadable. "I'm here on business," he said, "nothing more." Riggs stepped closer, invading space that wasn't his to take. "Then do your business and go. This ranch don't need outside trouble." Mara stepped between them, heart pounding. "He was just leaving," she said softly. Calder's eyes met hers for a long moment, some unspoken warning passing between them. Then he mounted up and rode off without another word. Riggs watched him go, jaw tight, something ugly simmering beneath his skin. When he finally left, the yard felt too still, like the land itself was holding its breath. Calder's presence lingered long after he rode out, but so did the shadow growing behind Riggs's smile. Days at Harlan Ridge passed in tight, breathless silence. Mara cooked, cleaned and served without complaint, but every hour felt like it pressed deeper into her ribs. The men worked themselves raw, yet their plates stayed light and their pay even lighter. After a week, she confirmed her suspicion. Barrels marked full were half-stocked, crates listed in the ledger never appeared, and sacks of flour vanished before reaching the kitchen. Someone wasn't shorting supplies by accident. Someone was stealing from the workers and covering their tracks. At night, when the house went still, Mara kept her own record, small notes tucked beneath a loose floorboard under her bed. If she couldn't stop it, she could at least prove it. One evening, Mrs. Garrett entered the kitchen holding a folded sheet of paper. "Mr. Harlan needs you to sign this," she said. Mara wiped her hands, unfolded the document, and felt her stomach drop. It listed charges she never agreed to: transportation fees, lodging costs, equipment use, interest, adding up to more than 3 months of wages. It wasn't employment. It was debt, a trap. "I won't sign this," Mara said. Her voice didn't shake. Mrs. Garrett's face tightened like leather left too long in the sun. "Refusal will be noted." "Then note it," Mara replied. The woman left without another word, but the air felt heavier, charged with consequences not yet spoken. Night fell hard. Mara scrubbed pans alone when Riggs stepped into the kitchen, door shutting behind him with a soft click that felt louder than a gunshot. "We need to discuss that paper you turned down," he said, voice smooth as spoiled honey. Mara backed toward the stove where the skillet still sizzled with grease. "I won't sign a lie." He stepped closer, eyes narrowing. "You don't get choices out here, girl." His hand lifted, too casual, too familiar, when suddenly the door banged open. A group of workers stood in the threshold, drawn by instinct rather than loyalty. Riggs froze, mask slipping. "This isn't finished," he whispered before sliding out the other exit. Mara's hands trembled long after he was gone, the stove crackling beneath her. She had come for work, but now she counted the exits in every room. Subscribe for more frontier stories. Mara slept in brief, shallow bursts, waking each time a floorboard creaked or wind scraped across the windows. The ranch felt different after that confrontation, like eyes were always on her, even in the dark. Near midnight, she rose for water and froze at the sound of voices outside the back door. She leaned close, breath held still. Harlan, Riggs, and 2 men she'd never heard before spoke in low tones about water rights, federal agents, and ranchers being forced to sell. Then, one voice cut through her ribs like ice. "And the girl?" someone asked. Riggs answered without hesitation, "I'll take care of her." Mara didn't wait to hear more. She grabbed her satchel and ran out the side door, boots slipping on snow as she fled into the dark. She didn't have a plan, only distance. The wind swallowed her footprints as fast as she could make them. But soon she heard hoofbeats, distant at first, then closing fast. She spun, ready to fight, clutching her satchel like a weapon. A horse burst through the whirling snow, rider leaning low in the saddle. She braced to run, but a familiar voice cut through the storm. "Easy, Mara, it's me." Calder dismounted in one smooth motion, his coat coated in frost, chest heaving from the ride. He wrapped his heavy coat around her shoulders and lifted her into the saddle without asking. "Riggs was headed to your room," he said, breath sharp. "I wasn't about to let him reach you first." The horse lurched forward, Calder holding her steady with one arm as they vanished into the blizzard. They rode until the storm became a wall of white behind them and a ridge of black rock rose ahead like shelter carved by the earth itself. A small cabin stood tucked against it, warm firelight flickering through the cracks. Calder carried Mara inside, the heat striking like a memory she'd forgotten how to feel. For a long moment, neither spoke. They simply breathed. "You're safe here," he finally said, voice low. Mara wanted to believe him, but the night still felt full of teeth. She watched him light another lantern, saw the exhaustion in his shoulders, the way he kept glancing toward the door as if expecting danger to follow. She had run from Harlan Ridge, but some battles don't stay behind. They ride until they find you. The storm quieted by morning, leaving a hard crust of snow over the valley. Mara sat wrapped in a blanket near the fire, while Calder brewed coffee, steam rising like ghosts between them. The warmth made her realize how cold she had been for weeks, maybe longer. She forced herself to speak. "It's not just the contract," she said. "They're stealing from the workers. Supplies never reach the kitchens. Ledgers don't match what's delivered." Calder stilled, jaw tightening the way it had when Riggs mocked him in the yard. Harlan's been trying to swallow the valley for years, he said. Water rights, land deeds, debts. He wants to own everything and everyone. Mara met his eyes. What do we do? He slid a rifle across the table, not as a threat but as a pact. We get proof, and we don't let them take you back. Before she could answer, distant hoofbeats cut through the silence, steady, purposeful, too many to ignore. Calder moved to the window. Riders. 6, maybe more. Mara's breath tightened. They tracked us. He loaded his rifle with calm precision and handed her a smaller gun. Stay behind me. Shoot only if you must. The pounding grew louder until voices echoed through the clearing. Send the girl out, Holt! Riggs's snarl carried through the wind. She belongs to Harlan. Mara stepped beside Calder, chin lifted. I am not property. Riggs barked orders, men shifting in their saddles, hands drifting toward guns. Calder raised his rifle, stance rooted like bedrock. Just as the standoff thickened, more hoofbeats approached from the east. Jake, the blacksmith Josiah, old minister Samuel, and a handful of townsfolk rode in and stopped beside Calder without hesitation. Mara's under our protection, Jake said. If Harlan's got a claim, he can bring it to court. Some of Harlan's hired men faltered, uncertainty replacing loyalty. Riggs spat into the snow. This isn't done. He pulled back, but only for now. The valley had drawn its lines, and Mara was at the heart of the fight. Subscribe for more frontier stories, new chapters every week. The fires started before dawn, smoke rising in columns across the valley like black flags on white snow. Calder and Mara rode hard, wind stinging their faces as flames devoured fences, barns, and homesteads. Families fought with buckets and shovels, neighbors dragging livestock through drifting smoke. Mara didn't think. She ran into a burning barn after the panicked cries of a trapped mare and foal. Heat slammed her back, but she pushed through until her lungs burned. The roof groaned, ready to fall, when Calder pulled her out just in time, arms shaking from more than exertion. You could have died, he whispered, his voice cracking. You came back for me, she answered. Guess we're both fools. The chaos united the valley. Workers Harlan exploited now stood against him, and those he tried to evict fought to defend their land. When word spread that Harlan meant to finalize the water deal at Squall Creek, Calder tightened his saddle straps. That's where we end this. Mara rode beside him, refusing to stay behind. They arrived just as Harlan, Riggs, and a railroad man prepared to sign documents that would control the valley's future. Mara stepped forward, placing old water right records from the Yazzie family onto the table. This land belongs to those who live on it, not those who steal from it. The railroad man backed away instantly. I won't sign anything tied to corruption. Riggs reached for his gun, but Josiah fired first, shooting the weapon clean from his hand. Federal marshals rode over the ridge, badges catching the sun like steel stars. It was over. Harlan, Riggs, and the sheriff were taken in chains. Weeks later in court, Mara testified with a steadiness she never knew she had. Calder stood beside her through every word. The judge restored water rights and freed workers from their contracts. Outside afterward, rain washed the smoke from the sky. Calder took her hands. I wanted you close from the night you walked into my saloon, he said, voice low. Mara smiled, tears warm on her cheeks. Then say it plain. He pulled her into his arms, gentle but certain. Stay. Be my partner. My equal. Yes, she breathed. I came here to cook, but I stayed for you. Some storms try to break you. Others lead you home.